Hi everyone, this terrible lighting will disappear in the next clip, fear not. I just wanted to start this vlog tonight after work so I can crack on with reading this evening. Hello, if you're new, my name is Jen. I'm an author and a book reviewer, and I thought I would start a new reading vlog today, diving into some reads for Halloween. I have 3 novels, 2 graphic novels, 3 short story collections, and 1 picture book next to me. I very much doubt I'm going to be able to get to all of these by the time this video goes up, which will be in just over a week. But I don't like to have a very limited TBR, so these are just the ones I'm going to be selecting from as this vlog progresses. So I'm just going to show you briefly now the ones I've pulled off my shelves, and then if you have followed me for a while, you know what these reading vlogs entail. I'm going to be showing you some baking, we might be going on some walks, and obviously we will talk about these books as I read them over the next week. So the novels first, we've got Chlorine by Jade Song. This, I believe, is about a group of women who want to become mermaids, but it involves body horror, and I think it might be a bit culty. I know it's also queer as well, so that is on the TBR. Then we have got The Centre by Ayesha, Manazir, Siddiqi, and I think that this is about a language centre where you can pay lots of money to go and acquire a language in a very short amount of time. Again, I think this has body horror in it and is linked with colonialism. I've heard very good things about it. Then we have Bored Gay Werewolf by Tony Santorella. And I was thinking about the colours on this. I'm pretty sure they've matched the colours of this book, if they're even showing up correctly in this light, to the colours that are used on the What We Do in the Shadows posters, which is apt because this is about a 20-something man called, what are you called? Brian, who has been turned into a werewolf and doesn't know if he likes this new lifestyle that's been thrust upon him, and he's trying to find a group of friends, also trying to work out what his body is doing. And again, we have queer representation in here too. Graphic novel wise, I've got A Guest in the House by Emily Carroll, which I've been hearing mixed things about, which panics me. Oh, it doesn't panic me, that is an exaggeration, but saddens me a little bit. I'm really hoping I love this one because I've really enjoyed her previous books, especially her graphic novella When I Arrive at the Castle. This is, as I said, A Guest in the House, and I think this is about a woman who marries into a family and then finds out that the previous wife who died maybe died in mysterious circumstances. I believe that's the premise. Then we have this adorable graphic novel called Seance Tea Party by Reimena, and I think this, well, what I'm getting from it is Tea Dragon Society vibes, which is basically what I look for in a graphic novel these days. But this is about growing up and feeling a bit alienated from your friends and instead befriending a ghost. Sounds like a good plan. Short stories, we have Parallel Hells by Leon Craig. This is a queer collection of horror stories, a collection of queer horror stories. There we go, that's better phrasing. A collection of queer horror stories. We've got Peach Pit, which is an anthology of many different writers, including Deisha Filliar and Lauren Groff, I think, yes, and Alia Whiteley and Kaiming Chang, where they're writing about flawed female characters. We have Eyes, Guts, Throat, Bones by Moira Fowley, and this is just screaming Halloween to me. It says, what will the end of the world look like? Will it be an old man slowly turned to gold, flowers raining from the sky, or a hole cut through the wire fencing that keeps the monsters out? Is it someone you love wearing your face, or a good old-fashioned interdimensional summoning? Does it sound like a howl outside the window, or does it look like coming home? This startling and irresistibly witty collection from the phenomenally talented Moira Fowley is an exploration of all of our darkest impulses and our deepest fears. And finally, the picture book that I'm sure I can get to in this next week is Leina and the Lord of the Toadstools by Myriam, Dahman and Nicola Digard, and it's illustrated by Julia Sarda, who illustrated the lists, I think that's right, let me double check. It doesn't have a biography inside, but I'm pretty sure she did, and I'll insert the cover here. It's a book that I love, and she's illustrated some other books that I've also enjoyed. So my feeling surrounding Halloween reading is not absolute horror, but kind of twisted, unsettling, perhaps a little bit gory. I don't go into, you know, slasher novels or anything like that. That's not my cup of tea. I would just like to be teased with darkness, if that is not a really weird thing to say. So I am going to be reading however many of these books I read. I'm going to be chatting to you to you about them as I go, and showing you some B-roll footage of other things that I'm getting up to in the next few days. And this video is very kindly sponsored by Series Readers too, but we'll talk about that later. Okay, I'm gonna curl up with a cup of tea and a book, and I will speak to you tomorrow. I will leave you with this very pleasing footage that I got when I was walking through the woods earlier today, and it just felt very autumnal and calm. So here you go. Hi, it's a few days later. I said the bad lighting would have gone, and it has, kind of, but still not the best, is it? It is that time of year. I have a dog here who would maybe like to say hello. Lola, do you want to say hi? Hello. Oh, she's just done a delightful fart. Isn't that nice? Aren't you so glad that you can't smell things through the camera? Hi, it's the weekend. We have had some success and some not so successful things. Firstly, I read Seance Tea Party by Reimena, and this is just so adorable. I loved it. It wasn't too twee, because I really don't like twee things, but I do enjoy wholesome things with beautiful illustrations, and this was just on the right side of that. And the colour palette, colour palette is so beautiful and not too samey either. All of it is screaming autumn, such as spreads like this, which of course have a lot of orange in them, but even the ones that don't have lots of typical autumnal colours in feel like they are screaming autumn, like this spread here. This is a story about entering your teenage years and feeling like you're drifting apart from your friends, and that society is trying to persuade you to ignore parts of yourself that you really like in favour of appearing sophisticated and grown up. So Laura, our main character, feels like she shouldn't be exploring her sense of adventure or imagination or any of that anymore, because that's not interesting to other people. But she's grieving that. She really loves that side of herself, so she decides to indulge it on her own, and she ends up making friends with a ghost. There is a layering in this book, because Laura is feeling like her friends are growing up and leaving her behind, but as the story progresses, her new friend, who is a ghost and is permanently stuck in childhood, starts to feel that way about Laura too. So I thought there was quite a bit of nuance in this book actually, as well as being, as I said, very wholesome, and I would very much recommend it. Sadly, a book I didn't enjoy, which I really thought I was going to. I even thought it could be one of my favourite books of the year, and that is Chlorine by Jade Song. This was recommended to me by Holly, and I'm sorry I didn't love it, Holly, but I can see why lots of people do. And I think it goes to show that even if a book seems to be ticking all of the things that you love on the surface, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to fall in love with the way that it's executed. So as I mentioned in the introduction of this video, this is a book about a group of women, young girls actually, teenage girls is where we start, who want to become mermaids, and we're told that this is going to happen right from the very beginning, that it's going to be very brutal, there's going to be some mutilation involved, and the narrator, Ren, is telling you the story of her life. So we begin with her much older, and she's looking back on her childhood years. It was just the narration style that didn't work for me. It's very persistent, very urgent, very I'm gonna tell you lots of things instead of showing you. And that moves the plot along quite quickly, but is not the kind of storytelling that I enjoy. The narrative voice in this is very cutting. It's very self-aware. It knows that it's telling a story in a meta kind of way, which holds the reader at a distance and doesn't create a lack of emotional depth, but a barrier, a refusal to let you into the emotional depths of this character. And even though there are plot points that do interest me in this book. Given I'm not gelling with the actual writing style, which will not change throughout the course of the book, I've decided to DNF this one. Life is too short to be reading books that you are not enjoying. Who would I recommend this for? I think I would recommend this for fans of Mona Award, and also if you've read Brutes and enjoyed that, then I think that you might like this one too. So that is a shame, but we can't love everything. And now I am reading Peach Pit, an anthology of stories, and I've just finished reading the first story, which is by Disha Filia. She wrote one of my favourite short story collections ever, which is The Secret Lives of Church Ladies, and her story in here is about a woman who's been called in for questioning by the police because people that she's been meeting on dating apps seem to be disappearing. I really should probably go through my short story shelves at some point because I haven't done that for a couple of years. So I may make a video at some point recommending my favourite short story collections ever, because it has been a while, and maybe introducing you and reminding myself of some books that are still on my TBR. The next story in this anthology is by Ming Chang, who is the author of Gods of Want and Beastery. So I look forward to reading more of that later, and I'll report back once I have. We are going to go for a little walk on Hampstead Heath. So I will insert some footage of that here, and I will speak to you later. Hi, it's the next day. I've started reading The Centre and I'm loving it. I've read about a third of it, so we'll talk about that in a bit. But right now, I'd like us to go and make some pumpkin gnocchi. This is a recipe that I found on Instagram, and I'm a little bit suspicious of it. I really like making gnocchi, and I've been practicing and trying to perfect a ratio for gnocchi over the past couple of years, the ratio between flour and potato. And I think that I've got it down now. So let me just quickly tell you my recipe for standard gnocchi, and then we can go experiment with this pumpkin gnocchi. So what I do is I get 450 grams of potatoes. This is for 2 people. And then I peel them, I boil them, I mash them, let that cool, add it to 150 grams of plain flour, a pinch of salt, 1 egg, knead it together. I'll insert some clips here so you can see. And then roll it out and cut it into gnocchi sized pieces, which I then boil for 2 minutes until they float to the surface of the water. And then I fry them in butter, because obviously that makes them taste even nicer. And I'll normally serve that with a tomato sauce, which is passata, basil, oregano, garlic, salt, pepper, a bit of white wine vinegar, a little bit of sugar, a little bit of tomato puree, a tiny bit of chili flakes, and also a handful of parmesan melted into the sauce as well. And then I'll top that with goat's cheese. So that is what I normally do when I'm making gnocchi. But these look really cute because they are shaped like pumpkins, and also there is pumpkin in the recipe. I think it might be a little bit sweet for my taste because the sauce is cream based, and that's not my favourite kind of pasta sauce. So I may add stock and sage to make it more palatable to me, but I will link the original recipe in the description box down below. And I think what I'll also do is, instead of using her recipe for gnocchi, I will use mine for the actual gnocchi itself, but I will not use as much potato and will instead add pumpkin puree to it. So yeah, I'm not sure it will work. I'm also not so convinced that the gnocchi will retain its shape when it is boiling. But you know, it's fun to try new things. This could be an epic fail, but we won't know unless we try. So let's go try. Do you know what? I would love to tell you that that was the most delicious thing that I've ever eaten, but it wasn't. I'm glad that I made it though. It was just, as I suspected, a creamy sauce like that is not my favourite kind of sauce. But if you enjoy creamy pasta sauces, then I would definitely recommend it, and I will link the recipe in the description box down below. Plus it was fun to make, so I approve in that respect. I wanted to talk about the centre because I am nearly halfway through this book. This is by Ayesha Manazir Siddiqi, and I am so in this book. I'm not here right now talking to you, I'm actually in the pages of this book thinking about it, and it's always a joy when that happens, especially after you've read a book that you didn't enjoy so much. I don't know why I'm always surprised in a delighted kind of way when I fall in love with a new book, like that's never going to happen again. Do you ever have that worry, or is that just me? This is a story about a woman called Anissa who starts dating a man called Adam, and she's quite infuriated by him because he knows lots of languages in a way that could be endearing but just comes across as quite smug. And then one day she decides that she would like to introduce him to her parents and take him to Karachi. So he turns up a couple of weeks later, having supposedly been away on a business trip, now fluent in Urdu so that he can talk to her parents in their language. And she's really embarrassed by this, feels like he's showing off, and is ready to break off their relationship. So he decides to tell her about this place that he's been to called The Centre, where you can pay £20,000 to become fluent in a language over the course of 10 days via a process of osmosis. You're only allowed to tell one person about this place in your lifetime, so he has chosen to tell her. And then Anissa becomes really obsessed with the idea of going there herself. She does subtitles for Bollywood films, and she doesn't love it. She would like to do something, in air quotes, more serious. So she thinks if she learnt German and became a translator of German books, that would be a really great thing to do for her career. There's a lot of discussion in this book about translation, the process of translation, translation as colonialism too, and lots of subtle references to language and literature in various forms. So at one point Anissa is reading an Emma McBride book, who wrote A Girl is a Half-Formed Thing, which is written in a unique way where language is pieced together differently. She's also at another point reading a book by Ocean Vuong, who's an amazing poet who couldn't write until he was, I think, 11 years old. There are also language barriers between him and his parents as well, which he writes about in his books. So there are just these extra added on bits if you've got the context to expand on those things as you're reading them. But if you didn't have that context, it takes nothing away from the text itself. In fact, I'm sure there are references that I'm not getting because I don't have that context and they're just passing me by. But when I am noticing them, they're giving me this little, I don't know, I was going to say jolt of excitement, but that sounds a bit hyperbolic. Maybe I don't mean it to that extent, but it's just very pleasing. At various points, Anissa talks about how life feels a bit like a fiction to her. She says, we, her and Adam, settled into each other more and started to speak of the future, of hopes and dreams that even involved children. And yet, it was all said in somewhat an abstract way. I went along with it, enjoying the discussion the way I would a daydream, almost as if it were just another story I was translating. She keeps trying to decode, demystify characters and situations, and what I'm really enjoying about this book is I actually can't tell where it's going. A lot more has happened than what I've told you about plot-wise. She has now gone to the centre and she has learned the language, but I don't know where this novel is going to end up, and that excites me because I feel like I haven't felt that way whilst being incredibly invested in a book like this in a while. So I'm very much intrigued. I'm going to curl up and read more of this, and as I mentioned at the beginning of this video is very kindly sponsored by Serious Readers. I have been working with them for over 2 years now, and I'm working with them over the course of this autumn winter, so please allow me to talk to you about them for a couple of minutes. As you may have guessed, serious readers create reading lights, and I will insert a cutaway here so you can see the one that I have behind me, which is a high definition light. This is a floor light. You can get it corded or wireless. Mine's corded but still easy to move around the house. You can angle the light however you need to, increase the brightness or dim it, and all of their serious lights range, as well as being made in the UK, have something called daylight wavelength technology, which they invented, and it mimics daylight, which just makes your reading all the more comfortable and easy on the eye. And as I'm filming this, the Sunday this video goes up is the day that the clocks go back, which is super cozy and lovely, but does mean it's getting darker earlier, and therefore I have been using this light even more, which I always do at this time of year. So if you would like to check out Serious Readers, I will leave a link in the description box down below. If you use the code SR403, that will get you £100 off a high definition light and free delivery. They ship worldwide, and also they're just really friendly and lovely to work with, as well as creating amazing reading based technology. And I love and enjoy both of those things. Thank you so much to Serious Readers for sponsoring this video and supporting the channel. I'm going to disappear behind my book now, and maybe I'll finish it tonight. Who knows? If I do, I will obviously check in with you tomorrow. And if I don't, I'll be checking in with you tomorrow as well. A life tip for you: if you have a rice cooker and you like porridge, make porridge in your rice cooker. This is probably something that many people do already, but I have recently started doing it and it is a game changer. My favourite porridge is Pret porridge, which I haven't had for years and years and years, and it's basically because it tastes like rice pudding, and I always thought it must have cream in it or something to make it taste extra good. And maybe it does, but if you make porridge in a rice cooker with just milk, it ends up tasting like Pret porridge. It takes about an hour, so it does take a while, but if you wake up at silly o'clock like I do, and you can just pop it on in the background and then take a cup of tea back to bed and read, then it is well worth it. I recommend. I did that this morning. It was great, and while that was cooking, I finished reading The Centre by Ayesha, Manazir, Siddiqi, and I absolutely love this book. This kept me guessing right up until the end. There were small reveals that I guessed along the way, but not way ahead of time, so it was satisfying. But the reason it kept me guessing is because the characters are quite unpredictable, and that's because they internalize so much as more information is given to them. It's about inherited trauma, it's about internalizing abusive behaviors and then maybe using that on other people. It's a commentary on colonialism and patriarchy, and yeah, you just don't know how the characters are going to recycle all of the knowledge that they acquire. There is some body horror in here, but the overt bit is quite short. It's more than you see the wider implications of this, and that has a rippling effect. If I had to do book maths on this, I would say it has an element of The Subtweet by Vivek Shraya. It also has elements of Poor Things by Alistair Gray, which I do not say lightly because that is one of my favourite books of all time. If you're a fan of Yellowface by Rebecca F. Kuang, I think also you would enjoy this. I'm gonna make a prediction. I think this is a strong contender for the Women's Prize longlist for 2024. So if you're looking for books that might make that list, I present this one to you. Tomorrow, I am gonna go and meet Lauren and Mercedes for a walk, which I am very much looking forward to. We're gonna walk along Regent's Canal from King's Cross through Camden, through Regent's Park, and the plan is then I will probably leave them because I'm still only doing outside stuff. I may, if it's quiet, put on a mask and go into Daunt Books with them on Marylebone High Street because that's probably going to be quite quiet tomorrow, but I don't want to cramp their style, so I'm going to hang out with them outside and then wave farewell, and then they can go off and do whatever they want to do in London, go visit other bookshops, etc. to be honest, that amount of walking is probably about the amount of walking that I can do at the moment, and I think I'll be pretty exhausted after that. So I'm looking forward to seeing them and going for a very autumnal walk, and I will insert some footage of that here. And then I will come back to you when I have read some more as well. That was a really lovely walk yesterday. I didn't actually get any footage of the three of us, but I know that Lauren took a photo, so I will insert that photo here. The weather held up because it was supposed to rain all day and it only rained as I was leaving them. So that was really great. It was one of those autumn days where it was very sunny but crisp, my favourite kind, and without wanting to get out my little violin. I don't get to see people very often, so it was very nice to see them both. I last saw Lauren in May. I think we went for a walk in May, and I haven't seen Mercedes since we went on a holiday together in 2019. So I haven't seen her for 4 years. So it was really lovely. Obviously we chat often anyway, but you know, it's nice to see people in the flesh too. So that was really lovely. And I will link both their channels in the description box down below. If you're not already familiar with them, you should go and follow them if you are not. So it is a few days later, and I have actually at least sampled from all of the books I spoke about at the beginning, apart from Parallel Hells, which I haven't got round to reading. So this one can go back on the shelf, but we have quite a bit of catching up to do. So I did start reading Bored Gay Werewolf by Tony Santorella, but it just wasn't the right time. I'm not DNFing this one. This one is just going to go back on the shelf, but I just wasn't feeling it when I picked it up. And I think it may be because it's quite a humorous book. I think you really have to be in the mood to be reading a funny book. So this one is for another time. Maybe it's also because I started watching the new series of What We Do in the Shadows. Maybe you shouldn't be doing both of these things at the same time. Yes, I'm not sure. Anyway, for another time, I will reserve judgment. Then I finished reading Peach Pit, which is edited by Molly Llewellyn and Crystal Buckley. This one had quite a few writers in whose work I'd already read and really enjoyed before. And I liked reading this book. I did feel like some of the stories kind of bled together a bit for me because a lot of these writers do write about similar themes. And I think that is obviously going to be the case if you get an anthology which pulls together lots of favourite writers. I think my favourite in here was probably Disha Filyar's short story, but also a new writer that I discovered in this book is Alice Ash, whose work I haven't read before, but I have now bought a copy of her short story collection, which is called Paradise Block, because I thought her writing style was just beautiful. This is a short story called Holes, which has a bit of a picture of Dorian Gray type feel to it. It's about race and class and body and the impact on women's bodies told through this magical realism macabre lens. I want to read you this paragraph. The daughter is still wearing her party dress when she takes off her smile and places it carefully in the big hole that she has dug at the bottom of the garden. Nobody knows about the hole, but she looks down into it and feels satisfied when she sees her smile safely stowed down there. It is just her smile. There are no teeth between her empty lips, just black dirt and worms. If you're looking for a collection of stories about unsavoury, morally grey women, then I do recommend this, and it has a lot of queer stories in here as well. In fact, it turned out that pretty much nearly all of my reading from this vlog is queer horror, queer Halloween type reading, which is always an excellent thing. I then read Leina and the Lord of the Toadstools, which is a picture book by Myriam, Dahman and Nicola Digard, illustrated by Julia's Sarda. And I purchased this one because I love Julia's illustrations in particular. This isn't one of the queer texts, but I will forgive it. This is about a woman called Leina who goes in search of this boy called Oren who has gone missing in the forest, and she finds herself at the house of this magnificent, or is he magnificent, toad. He's called Mr. Spadefoot. Look at that illustration, it's just amazing. And this is inspired by Bluebeard-like fairy tales. So she's in his castle and she's told not to go into a certain room, and of course she does go into a certain room because that's what women do in Bluebeard fairy tales, and it goes from there. And I just thought that this was really wonderful. There's definitely a Spirited Away feel to this as well, not just in the illustration but in the storytelling as well. I would recommend this for kids 5 to 9, I guess, but also for adults who enjoy reading a fairy tale or two. Then I decided to pick up this book, which I think I'm going to be dipping in and out of. It's an essay collection that I bought a while ago, but because I really love The Centre by Ayesha Manazir Siddiqi, I knew that she was in this book, which is Violent Phenomena, which is published by Tilted Access Press, who are one of my favourite publishers. And this is a collection of essays on translation. So it's 21 essays on translation, and hers is called Preserving the Tender Things, and it's written actually in landscape in these 2 columns. And at first I was reading it going down the right column and then the left column per page, but then realised actually it's formatted so that you read all of the left hand side first and then go back. A little bit like mirror poems in a way actually, because some of these pages would work if you read it differently. It's very fragmented, and it's written in that way to create these flexible borders, because again, like in The Centre, she's writing in this essay about translation as an extension of colonialism. I really enjoyed this essay, and it reminded me a little bit of Lily Hong's book Beastery, I think, just stylistically, and there are also some autobiographical elements that she discusses in this essay which appear in The Centre, which is not necessary to know obviously, but was interesting to see those parallels. So I really look forward to reading more essays in this book. I know there are essays by Karani Baraka and Anton Her, as well as 18 other people in here. So yeah, this is one I'm going to be dipping in and out of over the coming months, I think. After that, I then read A Guest in the House by Emily Carroll, which is a graphic novel, definitely an extension of themes that appear in her novella When I Arrived at the Castle, which I really enjoyed. This is about a woman called Abby who at the beginning marries a man that she's clearly not in love with. It is very heavily implied from the get-go that Abby is gay, and she's married this man because she thinks it's what society expects of her. Most of the spreads are in black and white to reflect how she feels about the lack of colour in her life and how pretty miserable she's feeling about the mundanity of her existence. That is then interspersed with these really vibrant, colourful spreads where she's dreaming about being a knight and rescuing a woman from a tower. Her mum recently died, she wasn't able to save her. Her sister died when she was younger, she wasn't able to save her. And the man that she has married, his previous wife, recently died. And Abby starts fantasizing about Sheila, the first wife, and imagining what she looked like and how maybe she could save her. So there is this element of desire in these fantasies, but then also Sheila just starts appearing as a ghost and she can't always control how that looks. It may be that she comes to her looking like she does in her dreams, and sometimes she just comes to her looking like a corpse, and it is very creepy in places. Here's an example of one of the colour spreads. And then the rest looks a bit like this. This is actually one with a bit of colour in because Abby is daydreaming at the time, but as you can see, it's mostly in black and white with a hint of colour too. I guess the question in this book is, who is the guest in the house? Is Abby the guest in the house? Is she the intruder? Is the ghost the guest in the house? I really liked how not open-ended the ending was, because that was the criticism that I'd seen of this book before reading it, that the ending is kind of impossible to decipher. I didn't find it impossible to decipher. I do think that you can interpret it in a few different ways, but I also like that about it. I think it's a discussion on killing parts of yourself to make other people feel more comfortable, and also the horror of grief in general and how that may materialise if we do not process our own emotions. So yes, I really enjoyed this and would recommend it. This is definitely, in case anyone was wondering, this is an adult graphic novel. It is not a middle grade graphic novel. And then I have started reading Eyes, Guts, Throat, Bones by Moira Fowley. I've only just started it, so I will continue reading it and I will talk about it more when I finished it in another video. The first short story is about the end of the world, and the blurb is quite ambiguous because it says, what would the end of the world look like? Will it be an old man slowly turned to gold, flowers raining from the sky, etc.? So I think maybe all of the stories in some way are dealing with the end of the world, whether that's literal or if something happens that makes a character feel like their particular world is ending, their insular world is ending. The first story is about two women at the end of the world who are going through or wanting to go through IVF and are trying to imagine a future for themselves while the world is falling apart. And I feel like that resonated with me quite a bit. Several years ago. So that was interesting. But what is the way the world is falling apart for them is that everyone is turning into salt or animals or flowers, the ground, and they're just on this endless walk where they can't stop, because if they stay in one place for longer, they will become the earth. I thought it was very beautifully written. I will read you a little extract. Into the house came the children. I didn't know them at first, but you did. You recognised them right away, welcomed them with open arms, 2 mounds of mud and mulch smelling of damp and dead things, earthworms in their ears and woodlice between their teeth, eyes still shining. They came first, tracked mud over the shiny floorboards, a lone, scraggly wolf cub sculpted in later. When the sun went down, in the darkness, tiny children, each no bigger than a thumbnail, climbed over each other to reach the low front steps and clamber across the threshold. Not long after them came the gingerbread girl, brittle brisket fists full of salt. It is a joy to actually feel those words on the tongue as you read them out loud. There's a lot of assonance in this book, a lot of rhythm, and that lends to the fairy tale theme, because historically, obviously, fairy tales were spoken via word of mouth. And I really like how these characters are almost spelling, as in spell work, witchcraft, spelling their futures into existence as the world crumbles around them. And if the whole collection is in part inspired by end of the world type tales, I think that's going to be really fascinating, because I enjoy books that do that are united around a theme. Forever ago, if you've been around since the beginning, you will remember that I particularly used to recommend Some by David Eagleman, which is 40 short stories imagining different versions of the afterlife, and Einstein's Dreams by Alan Lightman, which is a novel, but I would say it's a collection of interconnected short stories imagining worlds where time and space reacts and interacts with each other in different ways, and I still remember those books ever so fondly. So far, I would say if you enjoy Revenge by Yoko Ogawa, and if you enjoy Deirdre Sullivan, then I think you will enjoy these short stories too. But I will continue reading them and I will speak about them in more detail later. So let's have a recap of what happened in this video. So I did not get around to reading Parallel Hells by Leon Craig, so that is one for another time, as is Board Gay Werewolf by Tony Santorella, because this one just I was not feeling at this particular moment in time, but feel like I could love at some point in the future. Sadly, Chlorine by Jade Song was just not for me narrative wise. I adored The Centre by Ayesha, Manazir, Siddiqi. Loved this one. It could creep into my favourite books of the year. We shall see, because I have read a lot of great books this year, but I feel like it could. Also, something I thought afterwards is that I've mentioned this several times over the course of this year. I have been looking for books that remind me of the TV show Severance. There's just something about that show that I love. It is creepy and strange and also withholds things from the viewer quite a lot. And I feel like this, even though the plot is very different, is doing a similar thing, as in characters are signing up to something that they don't fully understand, and then they later realise it has huge implications on their life and they're leading this dual existence. So it is similar, to be honest, in Severance in many ways. But yes, I love that. And I am very pleased that I've now picked up Violent Phenomena and look forward to reading more of this essay collection on translation. Graphic novel wise, I enjoyed both of the graphic novels. They're very different. Seance Tea Party by Reimena is just so wholesome and lovely. As I said, if you're looking for something that feels like a warm hug, then pick up this. If you're looking for something that feels like a warm hug, don't pick up A Guest in the House, because that's not what this is. But what it is creepy and unsettling and layered. It will also have you guessing yourself as a reader, because Abby is very suspicious of many people in her life. And at the end of the book, you're looking back on all these suspicions that she has had and trying to untangle which ones you should give weight to and which ones maybe she was giving too much weight to. And I'm still thinking about it, which is a sign of a very good book. I liked reading Pitch Pit. I liked reading Peach Pit, and I am grateful to it, especially for introducing me to Alice Ash, who I look forward to reading more from in the future. That's the best thing about anthologies to me, to be honest. It's obviously, you want to love an entire anthology, but that is rare. If it's a collection from so many different writers, there are going to be ups and downs in an anthology. You are going to enjoy some stories more than others. But the thing I love about an anthology is hopefully finding writers that I can go and explore more from. So I look forward to reading Alice's collection at some point. Loved this picture book, illustrated by Julia Sarda. As I said, it's by Myriam, Dahman and Nicola Digard. Leina and the Lord of the Toadstools. This one, perfect for this time of year. And this is too Eyes, Guts, Throat, Bones by Moira Fowley, which I'm going to continue reading. And as I said, we'll talk to you about further down the line. Thank you so much for joining me for this video. I would love to know what books you have been reading recently, if any of these are on your radar or on your TBR, or if they now will be, now that you have seen me talk about them. Let me know in a comment down below. Thanks again to Serious Readers for sponsoring this video. They are linked in the description box if you would like to go and check them out. If you are new to my channel and you enjoyed this video and you would like to subscribe, that would be very kind. And if you enjoy my content and you would like to consider supporting me on Patreon, that would be lovely. Patreon is a place where you can support creators, and the support over there allows me to keep creating free content for you all on here and funds my time making these videos accessible by creating captions and all of that good stuff. Okay, I'm gonna go now. I'm sending lots of love to you all, and I will see you for another video next Sunday. Bye.